Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Latham with the Sunday Services Committee. Welcome to you and Happy New Year. All my old friends and new, young and old, you are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your thousandth Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins and sexualities. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. The following are a few verses from a poem by Warsan Shire titled Home, about being a refugee. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you breathe bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. Joining us this morning from the Catholic Charities is Catherine Buckley Bronner. Catherine has served as Executive Director of the Catholic Charities Agency of the Diocese of Springfield for 11 years and brings her own international perspective to this work, having participated in mission projects in Haiti, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Burundi. Catherine has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's in theology. Recognized for work with refugee populations, Catherine received an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters from the College of Our Lady of the Elms. Welcome, Catherine Buckley Bronner.
Good morning and Happy New Year to all of you. I want to thank you for welcoming me to speak with you about a project of Catholic Charities that is deeply connected to our ministry to serve the most vulnerable of our brothers and sisters, not only at home, but across the world. As most of you are aware, the US government pulled out the last of its troops out of Afghanistan on August 31 of this year. In the months leading up to that date, more than 120,000 people were evacuated in the Allied airlift from Kabul airport as part of a coalition effort. At that time, many were evacuated to countries like Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Germany, Spain, and Italy. Why were they evacuated there? Well, they were there to complete security screening so that any of the evacuees that were brought out would be thoroughly screened before they were actually then travel on to places like the United States. Many of them spent about 30 to 45 days on those bases overseas before they were actually transported to the United States. It's estimated that the total humanitarian parolees and SIVs that were evacuated to the United States is about 75,000. The majority of the Afghans awaiting entry into the United States were, and some still are, housed in military bases across the United States as they wait to start their new life. So it's been a series of holding patterns. So the evacuation from Kabul evacuated them into military bases overseas. Then when it was time to move them, they brought the evacuees here to the United States and have been housing them in military bases here in the United States. All of those who were evacuated were at risk had they stayed in Afghanistan. But time has also shown us that the Taliban, though outwardly claiming moderate policies, have cracked down very hard on the population that remains and are conducting active searches for those who are considered enemies of the government and their families. Some of the Afghans are arriving in the US with a status that's called special immigrant visas. Those were actually awarded to people who actually gave collaborative assistance to the United States Armed Forces during the 20-year war. There was not sufficient time, unfortunately, for most to complete their SIVs, so that special immigrant visas. So what we had is a large portion of people who were still at risk, whose SIV applications were still pending. Some of them also had no immigration petitions, and they were at risk for a variety of their own activity, either being outwardly outspoken against the Taliban government. Some of them were women, some of them were journalists. So there was a very large portion of our humanitarian parolees that had at-risk status, even though they did not qualify for a special immigrant visa. To accommodate this, the United States used something that's called the Humanitarian Parole Program, which allowed the evacuees to actually leave Afghanistan and be admitted to the United States under this humanitarian parole program. The humanitarian parole program has only been used in very special circumstances. One of those circumstances, in fact, was the evacuation from Vietnam of many of the people who were at risk there when we left Vietnam. This little use program does allow evacuees to work here in the United States, but it does not grant them permanent status. So it is not a visa, it is not a refugee status. It is a very special humanitarian status that will be temporary. There are 9 national refugee resettlement agencies in the United States. And these 9 national agencies were chosen by the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State as the agencies that would handle the acceptance and resettlement of the Afghans into local communities here in the United States. In turn, the national agencies contracted with local affiliates like Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, and Essentia Care Alliance. The contract was to receive and place the evacuees, just as we receive and place refugees that come throughout the year. The local agencies were tasked with receiving the majority of the evacuees between October 1 and the end of the year. So a very large amount of evacuees to move over a very, very short period of time. And as you can imagine, as it is, there are still several thousand that are still awaiting travel. So they are still in military bases throughout the United States. The task of the resettlement agencies is to help our arrivals secure affordable housing, jobs, and other services to facilitate their integration into American society. Employment authorization and Social Security numbers for our evacuees were applied for while they were on military bases. However, it has taken months for those documents to arrive. So without those documents, there was very little prospect for employment. And it also makes acquiring other benefits such as DTA, SNAP, and cash benefits that much more difficult. So evacuees have been moved to the local areas, but the documentation and a lot of the approvals that kind of go with that have been very slow in arriving behind them. Right now, families and individuals that have arrived to Catholic Charities are being temporarily housed, and we are working with each of them to acquire their needed benefits. All of them are enrolled in English classes. Although there were some that came with pretty good English due to working in close collaboration with military and US government agencies, others have no English at all. To date, we have received 82 arrivals, 12 families, and 29 single individuals. So you can see our families are kind of big families, anywhere from 3 to 6 in the families. We anticipate receiving up to about 10 more arrivals that we have presently assured, which is a process where we are offered an evacuee, and then we say, yes, we will take them. So we have about 10 more that we have assured. We feel that there will be more assurances asked of us because, as I said, there's still several thousand more who are on bases that have not really been assigned a local agency. Among our population, we have Pashto and Dari speakers. Those are the two major languages of Afghanistan. And the populations represented by our families and individuals are Tajik, Pashtun, and Hazara. So 3 very different ethnic populations. Many of the families have very young children under the age of 10. And actually one of our ladies, we are on a watch. She is due to give birth momentarily. We have temporarily housed all of them either in retreat houses or in hotel suites. And we have begun the very slow process of acquiring permanent housing for them. Some of the biggest challenges that our families face are language, employment, and housing that is affordable. Catholic Charities staff, with its volunteer circles of care, are actively assisting in all these areas. Catholic Charities itself will provide rental assistance to all our evacuees for up to 1 year and provide case management for them during that time. The fact that Catholic Charities is willing to provide that rental assistance is in some cases really helping us to actually acquire permanent housing for them. As we all know, affordable housing that is affordable is in short supply, particularly when we're talking about things like 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom houses or apartments or whatever. They're just few and far between, and they are not very affordable. But what we've been trying to do is work with local landlords and assure them that, at least for the first year, we absolutely guarantee that rents will be paid because we will be the ones behind these families supporting them all the way through that first year. This has been helpful in some cases, and we want people to know this so that if there are landlords out there who might be considering this, to assure them that they really, these families come with an agency behind them. You couldn't get a better combination than that for providing housing. Having said all that, those are the things that certainly are of concern to families that arrive in country, whose language is quite alien to them, and whose customs and religion might be also quite alien to them. So there's been a lot of cultural orientation, a lot of attempts to understand each other, because as much as we want them to be acclimated to who we are as Americans, it's really important that we understand where they come from and the customs and beliefs that underpin their culture. So those are other kinds of challenges that they face. But it's hardly surprising that the thing that concerns all of them and concerns them deeply is the family and friends that they've left behind in Afghanistan. We have heard stories from all of them, and it's frightening and it's heartbreaking. With the Taliban actively searching and killing those that had any connection to the United States or who are themselves considered hostile to the government, the fear is a constant companion for our families and our individuals. Fortunately, in this age of technology, most of them are in contact with their families and friends. But it also means that they are abundantly aware in real time of what is going on there. Most of the single individuals that have arrived are not single. In the process of the chaos at the airport in Kabul, many of them were separated from wives, children, parents, and relatives. And those stories are hair-raising too. It would be like the family would come together. They would be pushing and pulling to try to get into the gates of Kabul. One would be taken and the others would be pushed aside. So one would make it onto the plane, yet all the others would be left behind. We have one woman that arrived by herself with she and her children. She, her children, and her husband all were at the plane together. And as they got on board, he got pushed aside and he never made it onto the plane. You know, I can hope that you would understand that just being a single mother here in the United States, we as Americans, you know, we have many single mothers, but it's a challenge to be a single mom. But it is for them even far more of a challenge. In households where the head of the household is not normally female, this is a significant challenge for this young woman, and I do say young woman, who is here with her 3 children. So in the process of all that chaos, you know, there was this separation of families from each other. And those who have gotten here certainly feel they are lucky, but they also feel the pain of that separation and the pain of being lucky. They're also living with disturbing memories of incidences as they tried to escape Kabul. The fear, the panic, and the violence. So many were shot, trampled, and they relive these memories every day. So one of the things that we are doing is we're setting up the opportunity for psychological counseling and therapy for those who desire it. Just a chance to be able to talk about what they saw, how it's affected them, share maybe with each other the fears and the nightmares of having lived through this. One of the things that I have to say, though, is one of the constructs that we use is something called a circle of care. And having circle of care volunteers to keep our evacuees company and help them navigate a very different culture is truly a blessing. Friendship and trust are important factors in integration, restoring calm, and beginning healing. The reality of the services that are required to resettle evacuees far outstrips the resources that have been made available to the resettling agencies. So we've had to turn to the generosity of many concerned people of the Pioneer Valley to help us meet the growing needs. And that, turning to the generosity means in all sorts of ways: time and talent and treasure. And we have been very, very grateful to all of those who've been there to help us do this. In the realm of positive news is too, at the end of September, the United States Congress opened the door for evacuees to receive the standard refugee resettlement benefits. Now, that may not seem like anything to us, but it opened up the way for them to receive cash benefits for their families, refugee cash benefits for single individuals, access to health insurance, food stamps, and WIC benefits. Up until that moment, they were not eligible to receive those. So that has made a huge difference. Can you imagine really how many more resources it would have taken if they were not eligible to receive some of these benefits? Even once we have acquired employment and successfully placed our clients in permanent housing, there's another even, well, I don't know if it's greater, but it's an equal hurdle that we are facing. And that's the long process of acquiring asylum. Remember, I said that they're not here as they do not have a permanent status here. Their status as a humanitarian parolee is temporary. In the interim, which is about a year, they are going to have to apply for asylum in order to stay here. So even as we're kind of taking care of the immediate needs, and that's kind of getting them resettled, we've also been lining up immigration legal assistance to assist us with the asylum applications and documentation. We're all treading on new ground here. So moving the number of evacuees in and through the asylum application process will be long, and it will be hard. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, that's short for the short term is USCIS, is the agency that would grant asylum. Unfortunately, the USCIS has a several years long backlog of asylum applications to adjudicate. And a lot of this comes from some of the things that happened over the last 4 years. Many of the employees of the USCIS were let go. Certain kinds of departments were closed. We also, during that time, had this huge influx at the border of people migrating across the border who are also seeking asylum. So a very heavy influx of asylum seekers, and the USCIS does not have the resources, primarily manpower and staff hours, to actually adjudicate all of the applications that will come through to them. The kind of documentation and detailed that's required to acquire asylum may also be hard to come by. As you can imagine, when many people actually fled from Afghanistan, many did not have necessarily the presence of mind to find all of their documents and carry them with them. Some of them lost many of their documents along the way. So that is going to be another little hurdle. There is also the cost for legal assistance, as well as the USCIS fees for changes of status. So we're just beginning to actually open up that Pandora's box to see what this is all going to mean, not only for them, but for the agencies that are going to have to be there to assist them. There are, as you can see, many obstacles still to overcome, but fortunately we have many good hearts and hands that are committed to making sure we succeed. And if you ask any of our evacuees, they will tell you over and over and over again how thankful they are and how very happy they are to be here in Massachusetts. They have just lovely things to say. Massachusetts, they tell their friends in the camps and forts across the United States, you want to come to Massachusetts because the people here are so very friendly and they help us a lot and it's wonderful. Fortunately, they don't mention the weather. So one of our programs, the Circles of Care, I just wanted to highlight them for a moment. Because the Circles of Care is something that we started when we first started to accept refugees, which was about 4 years ago. We became a refugee resettlement agency. And we knew even at that time, there's never been enough resources given to resettlement agencies by the Department of Homeland Security to do the work that they ask us to do. So we said, well, if we're not going to have enough resources to do it, how are we going to do this well? And so we came up with the Circles of Care. It is a volunteer program of Catholic Charities. Those who wish to volunteer for a variety of different jobs are vetted by us, oriented to the program, and receive training. The circles support the work of the case managers, and they provided much needed capacity for activities like local navigation and networking, tutoring, shopping, that's the fun part, transportation, identifying possible housing and employment, and in general, companionship and friendship to these arriving evacuees. We have a volunteer coordinator. Her name is Keegan Pyle. And what I can do is at some point, somebody will tell me how I can actually get Keegan's email to all of you. If you're interested in being part of the Circles of Care, Keegan is the place to start. She does a wonderful job in making sure that everyone understands the program and receives the kind of training that they need in order to be a good circle of care. Circles of Care are made up of all sorts of different kinds of groups of people. We have a lot of faith-based circles. We also have circles that are made up of neighborhoods, just people who have come together, maybe somewhere between 8 and 15 of them that have said, this is what we want to do. We want to give our time and our whatever expertise we have in helping these individuals become more settled in this area. So we have an avenue for those who want to be a part of making this a true transition to stability for our incoming families. The first question that you ask is one that worries all of us. About 10 days ago or so, I heard back I was in correspondence with our embassy in the United Arab Emirates, because a lot of the Afghans who have made it out of Afghanistan, but who are still in Abu Dhabi, are sort of trapped there. if you will. They're not moving. UAE came back and said there are no plans for any official government evacuations in the near future. That goes for there as well as for Afghanistan. It has become too dangerous to do anything there. Now, one of the options that is open to people who are still trapped in Afghanistan is to try to travel by land and enter into an adjoining country. If they were to do that, then they could register with the United Nations High Commissioners for Refugees as a refugee, because their first country of asylum would be the country they entered into. They could petition the UNHCR and become refugees and receive a P2 status. That would be ideal if the borders weren't so difficult to cross right at this time. It is insanely dangerous to try to cross over into either Pakistan or to go through Iran and into Turkey. So it's like at this moment, so many of the doors just have been shut because of the violence and the potential for so much danger. However, on a positive note, we never take no for an answer. So we have been in communication with some of our congressional representatives to see what can be done at that level and see if there aren't some ways to bring about private evacuations.
I'm going to ask us to hold the questions now till the end. Catherine's agreed to stay with us, and we're going to go directly to Joys and Sorrows. But thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
In closing, here is a poem by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow.